the number one panel is Ms. Fadila Okhtari, Mr. Muhammad Syafwan, and Ms. Wira Hayu Nugraheni, or Ms. Karisma. I don't know if that. Yeah. Okay. The first presenter, Ms. Fadila Okhtari. Time is yours.
Excuse me, sir. Ms. Fadila Okhtari is our group, so we'll present
Okay.
the article Ahiyuni.
Okay, please.
Okay. Would I have a host? Oh, yeah, okay. Thank you. I'm not the host, so I can't share screen, sir. Okay, thank you. Did my slide is occur? Did my slide have in the screen, sir?
Okay, clear.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you for this time. I'd like to present our articles. The title of our articles is The Accuracy of Landslide Susceptibility Maps in the Regional Spatial Plan with Landslide Events in 50 Kota Regency. My name is Ahiyuni, and the author is Ahiyuni Begarta Bekti, Endah Purwaningsih, Fadila Okhtari, Indah Purwati from Universitas Negeri Padang, and Hamdi Nur from Universitas Bung Hatta. Okay, let's see about background and purpose. In Indonesia, we know there are two types of planning, that is spatial planning and development planning. Spatial planning in the form of, we can say RT/RW in Indonesia or RT/RW, and development planning in the form of development plans. Indonesia, we can say RPJP, RPJM, etc. The content of spatial planning is the plan of the pattern and structure and strategic area. The pattern consists of protected area, and cultivated area. Disaster-prone areas include overlay protected areas, meaning areas that are of concern to be protected. So we know that disaster-prone areas is to be protected. The spatial plan is set in several scales: 1 million, 250,000, 50,000, and 25,000. This study aims to look at the accuracy of landslide events with the landslide hazard map contained in the technical document of RT/RW, that is regional RT/RW, then related it to the main factor causing landslide from the theoretical studies that have been put forward. Materials and methods. The location of this research in 50 Kota Regency West Sumatra. The use map of landslide susceptibility issued by Regional Disaster Management Agency for 50 Kota, or we can say BPBD. Landslide susceptibility to the West Sumatra Provincial Spatial Plan, we can say RT/RW Provinsi. And then geological map, rainfall, soil type, land use, and slope direction. This study uses the overlay method stacking the variables of landslide and landslide susceptibility to the point of landslide occurrence, and then calculating the number of occurrence points in each class of landslide susceptibility and the factors that affect landslide. First, the result and discuss. Avalanche Potential Regional Disaster Management Agency. If we compare with the landslide potential map, BPBD, the landslide event is about 53% occur in low potential and 46% occurs in medium landslide potential. So the high, there is no even landslide. And then, if we compare with spatial plan, in the map of ETRW Sumatra, the potential of landslides occur in low class 46 and the medium class in 49%. So we in medium and 49% in high class. So I think the RTRW is more better than in RTRW Regency map, because the occur of landslide events almost 50% in high class. And then if we compare with the rainfall maps, the event of landslides occurs almost in 500 and 1000 millimeters rainfall, almost 100%.
Just me 2 minutes again.
And then if we compare with the slope direction, landslide event is northeast and northwest. And then when we result in land use land cover, the landslide event in field and rice field and plantation. And we can compare with the soil types, podzolic. The soil types podzolic, almost 70% occurs the landslide. And then if we compare with geology, it's a vary. Landslide, we can say in a percentage, that is in pilite, and then in sandstone conglomerate, and quartzites and intercalated quartz sandstone. And then if we compare with slope, so there are many events of landslide occur in class of slope 15% till 30%. So conclusion, landslide events are not dominant at high vulnerability in spatial plan book, meaning that there is an inaccuracy.
Okay, Ms. Ayuni,
Yes?
I'm sorry I cut your presentation because the time is at.
Okay.
Okay.
I think
Nice presentation. Thank you, Ms. Wahyuni.
Thank you.
The next presenter is Mr. Muhammad Safwan. Please, your PPT is at this room. Time is yours.
Okay, thank you. Hello.
Yes. Okay.
I have any trouble here. Sorry. Wait. Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Good afternoon all. Let me introduce myself. My name is Muhammad Zahwan Anwar. Here I will present my journal, The Impact of Transportation Growth on the Increased Sulfur Dioxide and Nitrogen Dioxide Cases in Surakarta City during 2013 until 2020. The first author is Muhammad Zahwan Anwar, Magister Program in Geography Education, 11 Maret University. The second author is Bapak Muhammad Kamal Rindarjono, Department of Magister Geography Education at 11 Maret University. And the third author is Bapak Ahmad, Head of the Geography Education Magister Program at 11 Maret University. Okay. Background and purpose: increase in energy resources, growing population, and increase in educational progress in big cities have made air pollution in urban areas increasing in recent years. The cause of air pollution in atmosphere is so that it exceeds the capacity of the atmospheric environment. Air pollution causes a decrease in air quality, which is influenced by many interacting factors: physical, economic, political, and social. They interact with each other in an interdisciplinary context. The wider industrial area and the higher use of motorized vehicles cause many problems for environment and human health. Population growth in Surakarta City, which has increased by 2.42% over last 10 years, has made the population higher, resulting in community activities becoming more diverse. This study aimed to examine the impact of transportation growth on the accumulation of sulfur dioxide and nitrogen dioxide gases in Surakarta City during 2013 until 2020. Materials and method. Location this research in the city of Surakarta with the method using regression analysis and time series for the period 2013 until 2020. Establishing 20 points of monitoring location for sulfur dioxide and nitrogen dioxide gases spread across the city of Surakarta, covering residential areas, office areas, industrial areas, and areas with dense transportation. Data collection in the form of sulfur dioxide and nitrogen dioxide gas was carried out using a passive sample technique. In the figure 1 is distribution of sample point for nitrogen dioxide and sulfur dioxide data collection from residential areas, office, roads, and industrial areas using the passive sample method. In the figure 2 is accumulation of sulfur dioxide and nitrogen dioxide gases in Surakarta City during 2013 until 2020. In the figure 3 is total transportation in Surakarta City during 2013 until 2020. Result and discussion. Transportation growth. Total transportation in Surakarta City during 2013 until 2020 was 131,720 units. In the period 2013 until 2020, the average number of vehicles in the city of Surakarta was 6,472.5 units. The highest detail found in 2014, which was 17,497 units, while the lowest number was in 2019 with 5,977 units. Transportation data that is calculated is only land transportation in Surakarta city. Transportation growth impact. The growth of transportation has a significant impact on nitrogen dioxide in Surakarta city during 2013 until 2020. F-count obtained is 59.112 with a significance level of 0.000, where 0.000 less than 0.05. The correlation value R is 0.946, while the coefficient of determination R squared is 0.894, which implies that transportation has an impact of 89.4% on nitrogen dioxide. The result obtained show that sulfur dioxide F-count of 4.249 with a significance level of 0.078, with 0.078 greater than 0.05. Transportation growth does not have a significant impact on sulfur dioxide. Discussion. The growth of transportation in Surakarta city has decreased significantly. Public transportation that is easy to find in community makes community accommodation in activities easier and more efficient. During 2013 until 2020, the transportation sector affected 89.4% of nitrogen dioxide gas accumulation on the surface. The greater number of people who choose public transportation over private transportation, it will help in reducing the amount of nitrogen dioxide on the atmosphere in the future. Conclusion. The growth of transportation in Surakarta city during 2013 until 2020 tends to decrease, while the development of sulfur dioxide and nitrogen dioxide gases fluctuates. During 2013 until 2020, the land transportation sector had an effect on nitrogen dioxide in the surface by 89.4%, while the sulfur dioxide gas had no significant effect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Safwan. Good presentation for this session. And the last presenter on this first parallel is Miss Dwira Yunugrahani or Charisma or Miss Charisma?
Yunugrahani, sir.
Okay. Okay, please, Miss Dwira Yunugrahani, time is yours.
Yeah, I'm sorry, my friend Charisma will share the screen. Is the screen is now visible?
Okay. Good.
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Pleasure to deal for everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Dwira Yunugrahani and team from Yogyakarta State University, and today I will be presenting our research entitled Analysis of Thermal Comfort in Urban Area Using Remote Sensing and Geographic Information System. I have divided my talk into 4 sections, and the first one is overview of the study. The second point is methods that we use in this research. The third point is result of our research and discussion, and the last one is the conclusion. And let's start with the overview of the study. In the first part, I will convey the background of this research. The rapid growth of the city has an influence on the existence of green open space. Green open space contribute many benefits to the city, namely creating a cool and comfortable environment. And due to the migration, currently the area of green open space is threatened to decrease. This land use change is predicted to impact change in weather and climate in most of the cities of Yogyakarta and cause the urban heat island phenomenon. Urban heat island, will have implication for thermal comfort, which can affect the productivity of community activities. Therefore, we are interested in conducting research on the convenience of the city of Yogyakarta, which is a migration destination because of its predicate as a student city and a city of culture. And move on to the method. Next. This research is a descriptive study with a geographic approach, namely spatial approach, that discuss and analyze problem by carrying and emphasizing geographic terms. And the approach that used in this research is remote sensing and geographic information system by calculating urban heat island and temperature humidity index, or THI. The study of urban heat island is significant in climate change because the increase of urban heat island indicates high energy consumption, which can affect the environment and the quality of life. And the next, I will show you the map of the study area. This research was conducted in the city of Yogyakarta, which consists of 14 sub-districts. And this map shows sample area in field observation. There are 31 sample area, and the next one is the temperature humidity index classification. This research used temperature humidity index as a tool to calculate the outdoor thermal comfort that felt by humans. The indicator that used in the calculation of temperature humidity index is air temperature and relative humidity. The index value then used to classify thermal comfort in study area in the table that you can see. There are 3 levels of comfort level, which consist of comfortable until very uncomfortable. And the next one is urban heat island classification. This research used urban heat island calculation and analysis by utilizing remote sensing data using Landsat 8 or satellite imagery in 2020. Result of urban heat island calculation then classified into the table that we can see that can classified into non-urban heat island until UHI4. And the next one is the result and discussion. This map shows some area with high temperature humidity index belong to the very uncomfortable class, where the air temperature at that areas is high and the humidity is low. The result of field measurement and temperature humidity island calculations show a correlation between temperature humidity island and the 2 leading indicators, namely air temperature and relative humidity, which we can see in the next slide. This graph shows the relationship between temperature and the temperature humidity index, which is correlated with a strong positive correlation. It means the higher the air temperature, the more uncomfortable and vice versa. And the next one, furthermore, next. The graph that will show on the next one will show the relationship between relative humidity and temperature humidity index. Which, as we can see, temperature humidity index has a weak negative correlation with relative humidity. And the last one, the result of the analysis of the level of thermal comfort based on the temperature humidity index value at the research site obtain a minimum value of 21.85 degrees Celsius, which included in the comfortable category, and a maximum value of 35.84 degrees Celsius, which is included in the very uncomfortable category. The comfortable class dominates the level of thermal comfort in the city of Yogyakarta, and at the same time, the rest are categorized as uncomfortable and very thermally uncomfortable in their activities. And the next one, this chart shows the percentage of comfortable, uncomfortable, and very uncomfortable categories based on the temperature humidity index value. And it brings me to the end of my presentation. In conclusion, from the result of data analysis, it can be concluded that the increase in population and build-up land allows an increase in air temperature, which affects the thermal comfort. Remote sensing and geographic information system can be an alternative solution in mapping the level of thermal comfort in urban areas. And Jakarta is dominated by comfortable class, uncomfortable class, and a very uncomfortable class. And the increase in urban heat island indicates that the humidity and thermal comfort of the city of Yogyakarta are decreasing. This research can be a recommendation for decision makers to optimize urban planning factors that affect the realization of microclimate condition. And that's where up And that's wrap up the presentation that I will be held today. Thank you for listening. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Nice presentation, Miss Dwi Rahayu Nugraini. Okay. In the first panel, any question? Want to ask a question? For three presented. Okay, if no question, I ask for Mr. Savan. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah. Mr. Savan, why your research choose SO2 and NO2, not another element? Why?
Because SO2 and NO2 or sulfur dioxide and nitrogen dioxide, it can I can form the data with the sample method technique, establishing 20 points in the city of Surakarta, increasing motorized vehicle, wider industrial area in Surakarta, increasing air pollution in Surakarta, and the gas the dominant air pollution is SO2 and NO2.
Enough?
Thank you.
Okay, enough. Okay, thank you, Ms. Savan, about your one again question for Ms. Dwi Rahayu. Yeah. Okay. One again question. Ms. Dwi Rahayu, what use satellite image in this research?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question, sir?
Satellite image used in this research?
We use the Landsat 8
Landsat 8.
imagery in 2020, yes.
Okay, okay. Size of spatial resolution is Landsat 8.
The size resolution is 30 meters.
Please repeat.
The size resolution is 30 meters, sir.
Centimeter or meter?
Meters.
Meter ya. Oke, oke. At least to Miss Dirahayu mix about size spatial resolution with size area. Yeah. Okay. Big applause for three presented in the first session. Okay, thank you for the three presented. Next to second session panel with this room. Mr. Irawan, presented. Mr. Irawan.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Jayan Amor. Jayan Amor or Mr. Ari? Not present. Okay. Mr. Dwi Tamara? Mr. or Miss?
Miss. Hi,
Miss, okay. I'm
Miss.
sorry. Miss
Okay.
Dwi Tamara, present ya. Miss Lilis Noviani? Present?
No, I'm present.
Okay. The three presented is Mr. Irawan and Miss Dwi Tamara and Miss Lilis Noviani. The first presented Mr. Irawan. Time for you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
No. Now I will present you about my journal. The main name is Economic Valuation of Cattle Farm Development in Mondoan Subdistrict, Sragen Regency. First author me, second author Mr. Joko Sutrisno, third Mr. Prabang Stiono. Next, background and purpose, Mondokan Subdistrict, which one of sub-district in Kabupaten Sragen is drought-prone area. However, cultivation is a main livelihood of the community in Mondokan Sub-district. Thus, this environment condition disrupt the local economic. The local economic also exacerbated by global warming, which caused the erratic shift of water because community supported cultivation is very dependent on the rain. The community plant rice in the rainy season and corn during the period of transition from the rainy season to the dry season. The local economic condition is where 50% the population is deemed poor needs concern. One of the possible alternative for livelihood is animal husbandry. Cattle farm development in Mondoan Subdistrict must be based on carrying an environmental capacity of environment. Environmental capacity for cattle development in Mondoan Subdistrict is very potential based on the data from Mondoan. The non-residential land is more than 3,000 hectares. However, the potential environment capacity in Mondoan Subdistrict requires an economic assessment for cattle farm development. The valuation method employ net present value, NPV, and BC ratio. Thus, the study means to determine feasibility to development cattle farm in the Mondokan district. The next material and methods, the research consists of two stages, namely data collection and data processing. The data collection stage was conducted by interviewing farmers in Mondoan Subdistrict. The sample were taken from Pare village farmers because they had a biggest number for farmers compared to the other village. Result and discussion, calculation of benefit cost or net present value. In cattle farm, TAV is more than 11 billion, and cultivation just only more than 44 million. The calculation benefit of cost, the cattle more have profitability and more than 11 billion. Now we developing cattle farm in Mondoan Subdistrict is now profitable business activity. Now in BC ratio, we know to ratio in cattle farm TFV and cultivation TFV. It's more than 11 billion. ratio in 44 million, 25 in 8.33. The conclusion, the economic valuation of the cattle farm in Mondoan Subdistrict, Sragen Regency was profitable livestock farming, and the potential income from the farming reached 11 billion rupees, and the biggest profit potential in cattle farm was on the sale of manure from processing the residual of the cattle farming business. Therefore, cattle farming in Mondoan Subdistrict is available business and activity. Thank you for your attention. Good afternoon.
Okay, nice presenting, Mr. Irawan. Next presenting, Miss Dwi Tamara, please. Time out you.
Thank you for the opportunity. I would like to share screen my presentation. Can you see my screen? All right. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm both honored and delighted to be with you today to participate in the remarkable international conference and on Anthropocene Global Environmental Change and Powerful Geography 2022. My name is Dwi Tamara. I'm here today to present spatial model of PM10 in Bekasi City, West Java Province. So I will begin by filling you in on the background of this paper. Largest population and characteristic location of Bekasi City can increase traffic, and it should be noted that combustion of vehicle engine can produce PM10. Currently, air quality monitoring is based on ground measurement, but this approach has limitation. And to solve this limitation, air quality monitoring can be done based on emission inventory and remote sensing. Then GIS, Geographic Information System, can help process pollutant value by producing spatial model. So based on this background, the purposes of this paper are to analysis of PM10 spatial pattern in Bekasi City, analysis of validity spatial model of PM10 from vehicle volume and Landsat 8. And as you can see on your screen, this research was conducted in Bekasi City and data obtained from field survey and governments. And now let me turn to the issues of materials and method. Data collection was carried out from February to March 2022. Next, data processing of vehicle volume using equation 1 and 2. Then data processing of PM10 from PASA sampler using Microsoft Excel and RMap. And next, data processing of PM10 from vehicle volume using equation 3 and 4. Then data processing of PM10 from Landsat 8 using equation 5. And let's now move on to data analysis. The two purposes of this study was answered using spatial descriptive, simple linear regression, and root mean square error analysis. Validity spatial model is also done by overlaying PM10 with land use based on cross-sectional lines A, B, and CD. As you can see on your screen, this map figure about sectional line A, B, and CD. And next, let's now turn to spatial pattern of PM10 from vehicle volume. The 6-lane arterial routes cover PM10 with moderate and unhealthy air quality index. The 4-lane arterial routes cover PM10 with good, moderate, and unhealthy air quality index. And the 2-lane arterial routes cover PM10 with good and moderate air quality index. PM10 is not only located on arterial routes, but also PM10 with unhealthy air quality index is in residential, transportation, and commercial and service building. Then simple linear regression analysis indicate that vehicle volume contribute 98.6% on PM10. Next, spatial pattern of PM10 from Landsat 8. The 6-lane arterial routes cover PM10 with moderate air quality index, and the 4 and 2-lane arterial routes cover PM10 with good, moderate, and unhealthy air quality index. As I pointed out in the previous section, PM10 is not only located on arterial roads, but also PM10 with unhealthy air quality index is located in residential, transportation, and industrial building. Then simple linear regression analysis indicate that vehicle volume contribute 1.6% on PM10 from LASAT 8. And next, validity spatial model of PM10 from vehicle volume. RMSE calculation spatial model of PM10 from vehicle volume is 0.028. And based on profile of cross-sectional line A, B, and CD, PM10 with good air quality index located in the same land use, and PM10 with good and moderate air quality index located in the same land use. Next, validity spatial model of PM10 from LASAT 8. RMSE calculation spatial model of PM10 from LASAT 8 is 18.436, and it indicates this model has no low error. Based on profile of cross-sectional lines A, B, and CD, PM10 with moderate air quality index located in the same land use. And well, this brings me to the end of my presentation. As final point, I'd like to highlight two key conclusions. First, based on PM10 from vehicle volume, large capacity arterial roads cover PM10 with poor air quality index, and based on PM10 from LASAT 8, it happens in opposite phenomena regarding congestion traffic on small capacity arterial roads. Some point of vehicle volume measurement are congested and other are not. PM10 with unhealthy air quality index also can be searched from residential, commercial, and service and industrial building. Second, RMSE spatial model of PM10 from vehicle volume has lower error than spatial model of PM10 from LASAT 8. However, if further analysis is done by considering spatial characteristics such as land use, several area models are located in the same land use. But ultimately, this research does not contain that spatial model of PM10 from vehicle volume is superior to spatial model of PM10 from LASAT 8 or vice versa. Instead, this research shows that combination of model errors and their relation to spatial characteristic can be a new approach to assessing model performance. And thank you for your attention. If you have any question, I'll be pleased to answer them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Dwi Tamara. Very good your presentation. And the third presenter is Ms. Lilis Noviani. Time is yours.
Okay, let me to share my screen. Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
I'm Lilis Noviani from Universitas Gadjah Mada. I would like to present our research with the title is Environmental Impact Analysis of PCC Cement Production or Portland Composite Cement using LCA, Life Cycle Assessment. With the researcher is me, Lilis Noviani, and second researcher is Eko Haryono, and third researcher is Wahyu Supartono. And this is the background and purpose of this research. Indonesia itself is the 10th largest emitter in the world, account for more than 2/3 of global emission. Cement itself has a strategic position in the Indonesian economy for development. The Indonesian Cement Association note in 2020, the total cement production in Indonesia will be reach 72 million tons. And energy technology perspective estimate that global demand for cement production will increase by around 2.9% per year from 2003 until 2050. And that we know cement industry consumes largest amount of natural resources and energy. The cement industry contribute 5% of greenhouse gases emission caused by human, and 27% CO2 emission from the industrial sector, and 4% of total greenhouse gases emission from the energy use. And for methods in this research, we use LCA, and this research was conducted at PT SBI Plain Cilacap. LCA, as it known as is a complex, deeply detailed process of breaking down all the input and output from the product. So we can see that the product release how much emission, and we can see how to minimize the emission. Using LCA, we can identification and diagnose where and why waste and emission generate, and then how can thus causes be avoided or minimized to make the cleaner production. We use the ISO 14040 standard as our LCA methodological framework. The standard indicate the structure of the LCA methodology having four main elements. There is a goal and scope definition, a life cycle inventory, life cycle impact assessment, and then interpretation. The study system boundaries include fuels, raw material, extraction and processing, their transportation to the plant and plant operation, including electricity consumption and output flows. There is a LCA framework, and this is data, and that data will be generated using SIMAPRO apps. And scope of this research is cradle to gate with functional unit as 1 ton PCC cement. This is the step of LCA in this research, and this is scope boundary in this research. Okay. And for the result, this is a cement manufacturing process that's from cradle. Cradle is a quarry next to raw mill, clinkerization, cement mill, packing plant, and cold mill. This is input in that process, and this is our output of the process. Okay. And this is inventory analysis. This is inventory analysis of cement production. In process raw material extraction and raw material preparations, cement industry use of fuels, electricity, water, and raw mill process. Cement use a limestone, coal, and this is alternative material, fuel oil and water. And in kiln, cement use alternative material too, with fine coal and electricity, and this is fuel oil to to transportation. And this is a process of cold mill. They are have input coal, electricity, water, and heavy equipment fuel oil. And this is a cement mill. How cement will be produced. with addicted of pozzolan, gypsum, fly ash, limestone, electricity, heavy fuel oil to heavy equipment and water. And this is input for packing plan. From that inventory data, we calculate that inventory data using a CIMA Pro, and this is that impact category of cement production. There is
Okay, I'm sorry, Ms. Lilis, time is the end. I cut your presentation.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay,
This is,
the session is the end. Any question for the third presentation from any participant? No question from the third presenter? Okay, I ask from Ms. Vitamara. Okay, why you choose Lancet to your research?
Okay, thank you for the question because beside being free and easy to access, Landsat 8 is several studies have shown that correlation between PM10 from Landsat 8 and between PM10 with ground measurements. So because several studies have shown that correlation between PM10 from Landsat 8 and PM10 based on ground measurements. So I use that beside being free and easy to access.
Okay.
Is that
Thank you.
clear?
Thank you your information. Okay. And the next question to Ms. Irawan.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Okay, Ms. Irawan. In your opinion, why cattle farm in Mondokan is more to find?
Sorry, sir.
Uh,
Can you?
in your opinion,
Yes.
cattle farm
Yes.
to find in the Mondokan district?
Fine.
Yes.
Today in Mondokan have more than 6,000 6,000 cattle farm livestock.
Oh, okay.
My journal is how to improve, how to develop more than 6,000.
Okay. Thank you. Informationnya. It's Irawan.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
You're welcome.
With Miss Lilis, why using LCA method?
Yes, why we are using LCA? Because LCA have to apa ya? LCA we can know what input and output from products, and then we know from making a cement how much emission release and how we can minimize that pollution.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Lilis. With the applause for the third presenter in this session. Okay. Thank you. The next session, Miss Jayan Amor, present, or Miss Ari Yulfa? No. Okay. Miss Nursita Arif, Miss or Mrs. Nursita Arif? Nursita Arif? No present. Okay, no. Mr. Muhammad Muhaimin?
Okay, I'm here.
Okay, Mr. Muhammad Muhaimin. Miss Rahman, Munaya Rahman? Present? Miss Rahman?
Yes.
Okay, okay. Miss Nina Novira? Miss Nina? Bisa?
Yes,
Okay, 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 okay. Okay, and the panel in the first presenting Mr. Muhammad Muhaimin, time is yours.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm sorry, can I show my presentation?
Okay, please.
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming to my presentation today. I am glad to meet you all. Before starting our presentation today, let me introduce myself. I'm Muhammad Muhaimin, and I'm from Lambung Mangkurat University. Well, ladies and gentlemen, in this presentation, we are going to discuss about livelihood strategy of Klotok service provider for floating market tourism, Siring Pierre Tendian Banjarmasin, in the new normal era of COVID-19. Introduction in this research or background. First, the COVID-19 pandemic has greatly impacted river tourism activity in Banjarmasin. Although there are already rules to the new normal tourism, there are still concerns for tourists to travel. This situation caused tourism service providers to still have to think hard so that their economic life can continue. And then the problem that then is the low ability of tourism service provider to find new source of income and are faced with limited access to assets. Research objectives. Identify and describe the livelihood strategy carried out by Hostor of tourism Klotok province in Siring Pierre Tendian Banjarmasin in dealing with the impact of COVID-19 in the new normal period. Research location, you can see Indonesia and Banjarmasin City, and this research is in the Martapura rivers. In method, quantitative survey approach, data source, tour Klotok service profit, the river and owner of Klotok tours then are still operating in Siring Pierre Tendian Banjarmasin, and then maps, imagery, and statistical data. Population and sample, 51 Klotok service providers, data collection, observation, data on the socioeconomic characteristic of respondent, questionnaire, data on the livelihood strategy of respondent, and then feed documentation. Data analysis, weighting based on feed activity. Second, preparation of level on each variable of community condition, and then empirical descriptive analysis. Research and discussion in this my research respondent characteristic socio-economic condition of Klotok tourism service providers. First, when entering the new normal era, the income of tourism Klotok service providers began to improve, although the increase has not yet reached 100%. Income is around 2,100 rupiah gross income before deducting operating costs, such as fuel and assistant driver. This meant that with this condition, tourism Klotok service providers still had to think about and make various efforts so that economic resilience continue amid the potential financial vulnerability they face. The family depends of the Klotok tour service provider range from 4 until 5 people for each household. And then this meant that the greater the number of family members in one household, the greater the number of dependents that must be met, especially if in the household there are family members who have not been productive, such as children, elderly people, and people who do not have a job. Livelihood strategy of Klotok service provider. First, survival strategy, reduce spending on meals and reduce the amount of kitchen shopping expense in 1 week. And second, the diversification strategy, diversification of Klotok service into Klotok freight transportation or Klotok taxis. Third, consolidation strategy, making a loan to the immediate family because it is more flexible and not complicated. And then a communication strategy done if the income they get is excess. The last strategy, network strategy, utilize government assistance, BLT, PKH, BNPT, and Social Security, BPJS, or KIS, and KIP. Conclusion in this research, number one, the ability of Syrian period Andean Klotok tourism service providers in finding the source of income when entering the new normal period is still low. Second, the most important livelihood strategy carried out by Klotok tourism service provider in Syrian period Andean is the survival strategy, meaning that all incomes result obtained are used to meet the needs of life, especially the needs of the food subsystem. And the last, the innovation carried out is to apply with other strategy, such as the diversification strategy, namely the diversification of Klotok service, the strategy of consolidation, tax debt, or requesting financial assistance from other parties or families.
Thank you, Mr. Muhammad Muhammad. Time is
Okay.
end. Yeah, I cut your presentation.
Thank you so much for attention.
Okay, the next presenter is Munaya Rahman. Okay.
Yes, Mr.
Please.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Gentor Adi. I will present for entitled Livelihood Strategies of Farmers in Loksado District, Hulu Sungai Selatan Regency. Next, background. Cultivation is one of the agriculture subsector business for livelihood of the Dayak Meratus people who live in the Loksado district. Loksado cultivator can stand in 2 or there reputation in cultivating their fields before they move to other areas and continue to repeat. Shifting cultivation activities then to decrease along with demographic change, decrease and movement of population at the local level. The government policies regulating shifting land into permanent fields make shifting cultivator must change their livelihood. For views, this condition makes cultivators do various adjustments to fulfill their household needs. An issue rise in research related to livelihood strategies carried out by farmers. This study aims to examine the livelihood strategies of shifting cultivators in response to the narrow of the agriculture land area in the Lok Sado district. Method. This research is based on a qualitative research. Informant in this study were shifting cultivators from Dayak Meratus people in Haratai, Lok Sado, and Lok Lahung village, Lok Sado district, which were selected by snowball sampling. This result of this study indicate that there are 3 livelihood strategies for household farmers. There are accumulation, consolidation, and survival strategy. The dominant base strategy is agriculture diversification. It's an effort to fulfill the household needs. Field diversification is cinnamon and rubber commodities to increase livelihoods, especially financial capital, when compared to field farmers who do not diversify agriculture. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Nice presentation. And the next presenter, Miss Nina Novira. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, time is yours.
Okay, thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, everybody. I would like to share my screen. So my presentation today is about the vulnerability of oil palm smallholder farmers in the times of global crisis. Smallholder occupies more than 1/3 of the total planted oil palm land, or around more than 14 million hectares in 2021. But almost none of the farmers possess the skill to process the fruit to finished or semi-finished good, so there is no chance to add value. Therefore, they are very much dependent to oil palm middlemen and oil palm mills. On the other hand, there's a price fluctuation. If it is according to season, dry season and wet season, it is considered normal, because in the wet season, there's a bunch of fruit. The fruit is more than in the dry season. So in the dry season, the price is higher than the wet season. However, there is a price fluctuation that is in accordance to season, that we suspect that it is related to the global and economic political and economic global dynamics. So our purpose is to seek to the understanding of the impact of the current arrangement to the economic resilience of the oil palm smallholder farmers. Our study is a qualitative study. We apply in-depth interview to collect data. The interviewed persons are officials in Trade and Small Enterprise Agency and Forestry and Plantation Agency in Labuan Batu Utara Regency. Oil palm farmers, oil palm fruit middlemen, head of village, also head of farmers union. Our case study is in 3 villages in 3 districts in Labuan Batu Utara, in Bulung Ihit, in Pulau Dogom, and in Sungai Sentang village. Okay, so we explore the price fluctuation. So our result shows that during dry season in 2015, usually the the price of oil palm is high. However, the price plunge and the farmers prefer not to harvest the fruit because the price is almost the same as the harvesting fee. Turns out that there is yuan depreciation and the plunging price of soybean oil in the global market. So the consumers of vegetable oil prefer to use soybean oil. So during the early pandemic, oil palm fruit price remained low through the season because there is a global economic slowdown and global CPO import sunk significantly. By 2021, price of oil palm fruit bunch was at an ultimate high. It is at 2,500 to 3,000 per kilogram of fresh fruit bunch. That is affected by the global economic recovery. However, all of a sudden, price plunged in 2022 because of the issue of domestic cooking oil shortage that led to the ban of CPO export. And although the ban is already revised, but the price remains low in the farmers level. Okay, so they are very much dependent to oil palm middlemen. They don't have any other source of, they don't have any other target for selling the fruit, and the middleman will then sell the fruit to the mill. So they have low to no bargaining power. They have no power to determine price. So they can just accept the price as the middlemen give them. They also do not possess any processing skill. There is no added value possible because oil palm planted land is difficult and costly to convert to any other crop. They're also very much vulnerable if there is a food scarcity. So some of the oil palm farmers are previously rice farmers. During their time of rice farming, they have food storage in case of food scarcity. But now, because they are converting it into oil palm, they don't have such thing anymore. So when the food scarcity ever to happen, these people are most vulnerable. So our conclusion is that global economic and political dynamic directly affect the price of oil palm in the farmers level, and no power to control selling price and no added value possible. So therefore, the farmers are very prone to crisis. So we suggest to focus more on domestic market because if oil palm is very much export oriented, right? But if the government focus more on domestic market, perhaps the price in the farmers level can be a little bit more stabilized, and then farmers capacity building, building up farmers ability to process oil palm traditionally, because early planters actually have that ability. However, they do not use it because they don't think they will need it. And then the establishment of local people-based oil palm mill and refinery. So with the today's Dana Desa, maybe it is possible to build BUMDes for oil palm mill and refinery that would be they could secure the price in the farmers level even more. this is all that I can present. Thank you very much. I give back the floor to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi. Thank you, Ms. Nina Novira. Any question for the presenter in this third session? Any question? No question. Wow. Okay. If no question, I ask for Ms. Muhammad Muhaimin. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Okay. What sample method in your research?
Okay, sir.
Yeah. What your sample method in your research? Sample method in use in the research.
Okay. Simple method in this research, 51 sample, Mr. Okay. Sample in research. Cloud service provider, sir.
Okay. Method sample is
purposive sampling.
Purposive. Okay. Purposive sampling. Okay. 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 Thank you, Mr. Mohaimin. The next question for Mr. Rahman.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, for Mr. Rahman. Why you choose Lok Satu district for your research? Why?
Because Lok Sado district have uniquely livelihood strategies. Okay. Ya, saya akan menggunakan bahasa Indonesia aja, Mister. Ya, pada intinya sih perubahan penggunaan lahan yang sangat besar-besaran di daerah pegunungan Meratus sana. Jadi akhirnya ya itu membuat saya tertarik untuk meneliti untuk bagaimana cara mereka beradaptasi dengan perubahan lahan tadi agar mereka mampu beradaptasi dengan keadaan mereka bertani di ladang berpindah ini gimana?
Okay. Thank you your information, Mr. Munaya Rahman. The last question for Ms. Nina Novira. What reason for choice research location sample?
Excuse me?
What your reason for choice research location sample?
Okay. Because in Bulungihit village, that is the village that is founded by one of the first commercial oil palm plantation land clearer. The Javanese brought from Java in 1926. So they witnessed the early development of oil palm in Sumatra. And the second place is Sungai Sentang, is where the government of Sumatra Utara designated the area of the sustainable rice field. But they still convert. Although they already designated as the sustainable rice field, but still they convert their rice field into oil palm. And then the third village, Pulau Dogom, is where the government already used the semi-abandoned land, because there are abandoned land, but there are some plots that already planted oil palm. They made the percetakan sawah baru, sir. Around 11 hectares at that place, but then in time they also convert back to oil palm. That's why we choose this location.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Nina, for you explain this research. In the last presented, Mr. Jayan Amor presented. Jayan Amor or Ari Yulfa? No. Okay. Miss Eric Nesa Hayo or Miss Komaria or Muhammad Maskuri? No. Okay. No. Mr. Kurnia Fitriana presented? No. Mr. Chandra Gunawan? No. Okay. No. Mr. Sapudin?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, please, Mr. Sapudin, to present your research. Time is yours.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, in simple session of the International Conference on Environmental Management allows me to an opportunity that given to us present the article with the title analysis of characteristic and change of mangrove forest in the sub-district of Serasan Natuna Regency year 2011 until 2022. Background and purpose: mangrove forests are forests that grow in the river mount, tidal area, or seaside. Mangrove are a group of plants that live in coastal area, which are a group of plants consisting of forested and trees, but have a similarity in terms of morphological and physiological adaptation to habitat that are influenced by tides. In Serasan district, Natuna Regency can be found forest type of mangrove, but the reality show that there is a lack of public awareness to attention and maintaining the integrity of the forest so that it can be beneficial for survival of the community. In setting development oriented toward the economy aspect of the mangrove ecosystem harm the existence of mangrove forest, resulting in several areas being damaged or even lost, and the quality of environment ecosystem deficit. Therefore, the role of the community is very much needed. Experiencing and maintaining, caring for, and protecting the existing mangrove forest, namely by not destroying the forest carelessly and complying with all applicable regulation, and help individual awards in themselves so that they can control and activities participate in maintaining mangrove forest in the area Serasan Subdistrict Natuna Regency. Material and methods: this research is qualitative descriptive research. Descriptive analysis is used to provide explanation for the variable study following the condition at the research site. Mapping data triangulation technique are used, namely data collection technique, the combined forest data collection technique, and existing data. So, in addition, this descriptive data product is intended to obtain an overview of the study of change in mangrove forest area, distribution and characteristic of mangrove forest, and management of mangrove forest by coastal community in Serasan Subdistrict Natuna Regency. The research approach is a super approach. Result and discussion: A. Distribution and characteristic of mangrove forest in Serasan Subdistrict Natuna Regency in 2022. 1. Mangrove density. Table 1, mangrove density level. Based on the data in the table above, the density level of mangrove forest in Serasan district with total area of 230.1 hectare or 100%. Here as 3 density level named density medium, and rare. Next, mangrove forest zoning. The zoning of mangrove in the research area of Serasan Subdistrict consists of 5 villages, where the observation is located as follows. A. The R cluster, the C is dominated by a reservoir apicculata. B, more forward, the land, the mangrove forest is dominated by Rhizophora stylosa. C, the next zone is dominated by Avicennia, or is a transition zone between mangrove forest and lowland forest. B, change the mangrove of forest in Serasan district Natuna Regency from 2011 until 2022. Table 2, mangrove area in Serasan district in 2011. Based on data in the table above, the total of mangrove forest area in Serasan district in 2011 from 5 villages is 244.13 hectare. Table 3, mangrove area in Serasan district in 2015. Based on the data in the table above, the total mangrove forest area in Serasan district in 2015 from 5 villages with mangrove forest area is 213.863. This figure 3, mangrove distribution map in 2015. Table 4, mangrove area in Serasan district in 2022. Based on the data in the table above, the total mangrove forest area in Serasan district in 2022 from 5 villages with a mangrove forest area is 221.951. This figure 4, mangrove distribution map in 2022. Table 5, data overlay map of mangrove forest in Serasan district 2011 until 2015. Based on the data in the table above, the result of the map overlay analysis on change in the mangrove forest area in Serasan district from 2011 to 2015 had an area change of 5.312. This figure 5 overlay map of mangrove forest in 2011 to 2015. Next, table 6, data overlay map of mangrove forest in Serasan district in 2015 to 2022. Based on the data in the table above, the result of the map overlay of change in mangrove forest area in Serasan district from 2015 to 2052 had an area change of 7.015 hectare. This figure 6 overlay map of mangrove forest in 2015 to 2052. Constellation based on the result of the research that has been carried out.
Excuse me, Ms. Sabtuddin, time
Yes.
is end. I cut your presentation. Thank you.
Okay, sir.
Okay, thank you. Any question for Mr. Sabtuddin, the last presenter in this session? Any question?
Okay, sir, I have a question.
Okay, thank you. Please, the name is?
Okay. My question for Mr. Sabtuddin. How accurate is your mangrove mapping?
Maaf, Mas, ke bahasa Indonesia aja bisa, Mas?
Okay, no problem.
Usually, please repeat, Ms. Mohaimin.
Okay.
Question.
My question for Mr. Sabtuddin, how accurate is your mangrove mapping? How accurate is your mangrove mapping?
Indonesian, please.
Oh, accurate for your mapping mangrove. Seberapa akurat sih pengenataan mangrove yang ada buat itu?
Oh ya, saya jawab pakai bahasa Indonesia ya, Prof. Jadi untuk keakuratannya ini kan saya menggunakan data yang terbaru dari untuk tahun 2011, 2015, dan 2022. Jadi data ini pasti akurat. Mungkin bisa diulangi lagi, Pak, pertanyaannya.
Pertanyaannya, bagaimana akurasi terkait dengan pemetaan mangrove-nya seperti itu?
Oh, mengenai akurasinya ya, Pak. Oke, mengenai akurasinya saya rasa cukup akurat karena ini merupakan data yang terbaru yang saya dapatkan dari citranya baik tahun 2011, 2015 dan 2022. Jadi untuk sebelum saya membuat pertanyaan pasti untuk sudah saya survei ke lokasi seperti itu.
Enough or no? And Mr. Mohammed.
Okay, maybe discuss on time.
Okay, please. Okay, no problem.
Okay. How to method for accuracy your research method in accuracy. Bagaimana cara pengukuran akurasinya seperti itu? Mungkin metodenya lah, seperti mungkin minta dijelaskan.
Oh, untuk ya seperti yang sudah saya jelaskan tadi, untuk akurasinya saya kan menggunakan metode deskriptif kualitatif. Jadi dari gambaran apa yang sudah didapat itu dijelaskan.
Okay, so thank you so much, Mr. Samsudin, for your answer.
Thank you, Mas. Terima kasih.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mohammed and Mr. Samsudin. Is your discussion in this room. The last, please open your camera to take a picture in this session, please. Miss Ayuni, please open your camera. Miss Lilis. Hello, Miss Ayuni. Yeah, enough. Okay. Thank you. This session parallel in room A is the finish, but in this room at the before we close this conference, information about the review process, payment recipient certificate and publication to IOP will be sent to your email. And in this session, the best presenter in this room, the best presenter is symbolized and presented below Miss who is Dwi Tamara. Okay. Okay, Miss Dwi Tamara. Congratulations. You are the best presenter in this room. Mr. Irawan, any question?
Yes, I have a question, sir, about presenter can attendance.
Yes.
In article code, we find in where?
Okay. About we send to email, your email.
Article code.
Code.
Yeah.
Code Miss Irawan.
Only 30.
Miss Irawan.
Example me.
Yes, yes, 13.
30. Okay.
13.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for all participants. See you at the next international conference on Anthropocene, Global Environmental Change, and Powerful Geography. thank you, all the best. Stay safe. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Okay, success for you all.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you.
Goodbye, sir. Goodbye, all.
Okay, you're welcome.